Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. This is today, the day that has been made for all of us to rejoice and be glad in it. Oh, magnify the Creator with me and let us exalt the Creator's name together. My soul boasts in the Creator, and in this that I am glad. Welcome, and we welcome you to this auspicious occasion this day, August 22nd, 2024. We welcome you to this time of conversation and understanding of where we stand as an organization. We are the Interfaith Reparatory Justice Table, an ancillary group of the National Convention, the National Council of the convention must have been a slip, but the National Council of the Churches of the US, and we are so glad to have you join us today. If you're able to put in the chat who you are and where you're from, we would greatly appreciate it. We are just going to flow today in the spirit of our agenda, where we will talk about uh, we will have an opening prayer and reflection. Then we will have the national conversation from Keith and Jared. From there, we will have church and denomination efforts with the disciples of Christ, and then the Catholic Church, the Episcopal Church, and the United Church of Christ contribution. We also have a conversation from the Presbyterian Church USA as it relates to challenges. And then when you'll see me pop back on, we are going to be wrapping it back up with the what's next opportunities for engagement and a closing. So with that, welcome, welcome, welcome. And now I turn you over into the capable hands of our opening prayer and reflection. Thank you so much.
Shalom, everyone. It is truly an honor to share this message with you all today. It is my sincere hope that you are all doing well and having a safe and happy summer. What an important time to be alive right now, in this moment in our history, when we, each of us, has an opportunity to write the story of the ancestors that we want to be. I want to offer a prayer today to bless the sacred work that we are doing and will continue to do to make our world a better place for everyone. Please join me. Dear God, Hashem, please bless every person on this Zoom screen. Bless our hands, our hearts, our spirits, our souls, and our minds, that we each may continue to do your holy work of seeing every human being through the image of God, of what we call in Judaism, B'Tselem Elohim. Quoting the words from the sacred Jewish text, God created humanity from the four corners of the earth, yellow clay and white sand, black loam and red soil, so that no part of humanity can say that they do not belong here, that this is not our rightful home. Please, God, grant us the knowledge to teach others about what it means to seek truth and to repair. Please grant us the grace to meet people where they are and understand that those who are pushing against the work we are trying to do are also carrying historic trauma that has yet to be healed. Help heal them, dear God, so that they may know the power and importance of reflection, redemption, and reparatory justice. And finally, I ask God, Hashem, to grant all of us with what I call holy boldness, so we can continue with courage and commitment to stay the course, to see reparatory justice applied to those who continue to suffer from the impacts of enslavement in our country, and begin to right the wrongs of the past. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotov v'tzivanu l'dor tzedek. We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, who calls us to holiness through mitzvot, commanding us to pursue justice. Amen. My name is Yolanda Savage Narva. I use she, her pronouns. I'm sitting on the unceded ancestral land of the Pamunkey Piscataway people, also known as Washington, D.C., and I'm the Vice President of Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion and Communities of Belonging for the Union for Reform Judaism and the Religious Action Center. First, I want to acknowledge the organizers of this event. Thank you very much for organizing this and for celebrating where we started and where we are today. We've worked hard and we should be proud. I also want to thank CJ Weschler Sanchez and Sammy Angelina, RAC's legislative assistants, for being such amazing representatives of the RAC and the work we are doing in reparatory justice. In 2019, the Reform Movement, the largest, most diverse movement in Judaism, passed a resolution to support the study of reparations at the federal level. If we fast forward to today, we have continued the work to promote what I call little r and big R, continuing to advocate for the study of reparations at the federal level. We support local and state reparations work. We support bringing awareness and providing education to our own Jewish community around reparations through webinars and discussions. And most recently, we have created a reparations toolkit that will be available to everyone. The toolkit consists of a brief history of enslavement, the Jewish involvement in slavery, the Jewish case for supporting reparations, and examples and efforts that we have put place to implement little r reparations in our communities and our synagogues. But the work has only just begun. Yes, we want to celebrate the progress we've made to date, and we also have so much more work to do. The Jewish community, the Reformed Jewish community, is committed to doing this work with you, our sacred partners. We know that there are a lot of things going on in the world, and these things are dividing us, but we have to stay the course. Today, I challenge you, I challenge myself to do 4 things. Number 1, continue to stay in sacred partnership and relationship with one another. That's the only way we're going to be able to communicate and move. Number 2, meet each other where we are, knowing that we all have a story. We all have something that we're bringing to the conversation. Number 3, live and recognize that there are multiple truths out there, that there are things that can be true all at once. And 4th, continue to see each other through B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. Thank you for this opportunity. Be well, everyone. Take care and keep the faith.
Thank you, Yolanda. Thanks so much for opening us up in a very good way. My name is Keith Swartzenduber, and I'm with the National Council of Churches, the commuter for this group, the Interfaith Reparatory Justice Table. With me is my colleague and friend, Jared Smith of Network Lobby. Hey, Jared, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Keith. That was an incredible opening.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm really excited. We'll try to put a link to the toolkit that was mentioned in the chat for you all, so you can download it. I want to mention as well that NCC also has a toolkit as well on our website, nationalcouncilofchurches.us, that was developed in collaboration with the Harvard Divinity School and the Kennedy School of Government there, the William Monroe Trotter collaborative project on reparations. So feel free to get those tools. There's lots of tools out there. You'll hear more on some of that later on this evening. Jared and I are here to talk a bit about the overarching landscape nationally in reparations. I know that this may not, in some areas, may be more of a topic that you've heard about. In other areas, may not be as much so. I imagine the folks that are with us this evening probably know a little bit more than the average person, but we want to give you a little bit of sense of what we're seeing here in DC. We're both located in DC and do work on this on a federal level, give you a sense of what's happening on that front. Jarrett, wait, do you want to give us an update on Black farmers and the Black farmers?
Yes, Keith, I will, but let me just say a little bit about what I do at Network Lobby for Catholic
Please
Social
do.
Justice. Um, I'm on the government relations team. I part of my portfolio are a myriad of issues. So I don't just cover reparations. I also I'm on the Hill or working with the administration when it comes to affordable housing, artificial intelligence, tax, broadband. So there are a lot of things that I'm trying to move forward in a progressive manner so that we can improve the quality of lives for many people in this country. And reparations is at the heart of everything that we do at Network. We're calling it racial equity, how to improve Black and Brown folks, especially Black people, and what has happened during enslavement here, and especially with the Catholic Church's participation. So we don't do state or local work. It is only federal work here at Network. And one piece of legislation that recently passed that has been a big surprise for us, we were, very happy, is the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, had a lot of different pieces of legislation. Some of the things that I work on, like the IRS Direct File uh, uh, program. It was a pilot last year, and recently Treasury and IRS said that they're going to roll it out to all 50 states. So that was a great accomplishment for us. We also saw a huge amount of money allocated towards the IRS to improve the quality of customer service for people that have interaction with the IRS. But a bonus was the 2 billion that went to Black farmers. Uh, there's been a whether it's lawsuits, folks coming to DC to advocate before Congress, the administration in the past about Black farmers not getting the resources for financing their farms. And so there was finally an agreement that was made that Black farmers will see some modest payments up to $500,000 to try to make some of these folks whole. One thing that I would say that, this is a great step, and we can use this as a precedent for HR 40, the big reparations study bill that has been introduced to Congress for many, many years, every session. But this is like the Congress showing that it can repair former harms done to Black people in this country. I think this is excellent, but there's a lot of work to go forward. For those people that were trying to, pursue farming, but were just shut out from financing. They only get a modest amount of money from this agreement. And, if you look at the data that shows the number of Black farmers that has disappeared in this country because, they didn't have the financing. Financing is a critical part of farming. It has just dramatically changed, in the number of the amount of land that is owned by Black farmers, and the driver of that is the lack of financing. So it's a good day for us, but there is a lot more work that needs to be done on this, and I look forward to working with you, Keith, and our other partners that work on this issue and many other reparatory justice issues.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, yeah, you mentioned in the midst of the Black farmers, that this being one example of kind of responding to direct harms from discrimination. An additional effort that you mentioned briefly is HR 40, which is a bill to create a study commission that would look at questions of reparations, reparatory justice, and try to begin to create a rubric through which a number of these issues, not just with Black farmers, but some of the larger psychosocial harms that have literally embedded themselves physically upon especially African American people in this country, dating all the way back to slavery and up through Jim Crow and up through today as well. So HR 40 looks to begin that process of looking at those particular measures that might be useful for that. For a number of years, the HR 40 was championed by Representative John Conyers. Last several years was championed by Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, who unfortunately passed not that long ago, a few weeks ago. And so that bill at this particular moment is without a champion. Another leader in the reparations movement as well, Representative Cori Bush. Some of you may have seen in the news that she actually lost her primary campaign. And so it's going to be, with the new Congress after the first year after this election, there's going to be a need for new champions to step up and take the mantle to continue to push this on the floor of Congress. So it makes this election that much more crucial, the fact that we're in need of some new leaders. And so as you folks go out to town halls and such things, please bring up reparations, bring up reparatory justice, bring up the need for justice at these town halls, and make this an issue. Because if folks don't know that this is an issue, your candidates don't know this is an issue, that champions will not arise. We need to make sure that we're telling Congress this is work that needs to be done, and this is important to us as voters, as Americans, that we need to deal with these historic harms.
Hey, Keith, if I can add just quickly, my understanding, my understanding is that Representative Hakeem Jeffries was in the running to take the mantle of HR 40. Now, as everyone knows, Leader Jeffries will become Speaker once, God willing, once the House changes over. So as Speaker, he's not going to be able to, take this on, but he will be part of that decision matrix that look at who's going to once again be the champion of such a very, very important bill. It's just a study. Everybody, understand that's all this is. This is a study. The federal government funds studies each and every day, at NIH and other agencies. And in my opinion, this is nothing different. We're just looking at this issue, and we will go from there. But the people should not be afraid of this. This is just a study.
Indeed, they should not be afraid of it. And it's something that over the past several years, since Sheila Jackson Lee and others who were pushing for reparations in Congress were not in the majority. In recent months, the strategy has moved to seeking an executive order from the White House, looking for the president to actually put his name on the dotted line as being in support of reparations, and to make a substantial impact upon this movement and burnish his legacy, to be quite frank. At this point, we, as we've been working on this, President Biden was still in the running to get a second term. He is no longer running, and so it provides a perfect opportunity following the election to encourage him to burnish that legacy a little bit more and to get an executive order to establish this reparations commission. This is something that even Representative Jackson Lee, before she passed, had moved to strategy-wise, was to try to get President Biden, get the White House to support this and to move it forward so that we can get this process of realizing justice and addressing historic harms moving forward, so we can begin that process of healing, a messy process, but a necessary process, definitely. So
Yeah,
that is in the short term, but yeah, there's opportunities there for sure.
Right, exactly, Keith. And at Network, I just want to mention that we have we were part of all the advocacy associated with when Representative Sheila Jackson Lee was trying to move the bill in Congress, and then we switched, just like you and members on this call, to an executive order strategy. And we sent postcards, we put out action alerts to get the administration to take this action. But right now, with President Biden no longer at the top of the ticket for the 2024 election, there isn't any political downside. This is, I think, a mile marker for him, for how he's going to be remembered, and it is an excellent opportunity to move this country forward.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And regardless of what party is in charge in Congress or in the White House, oftentimes in history, it's the grassroots, it's the local communities where change begins, and change begins to happen, and that pressure comes up from down below. So I'm looking forward to, in our next section here, we'll be hearing from a number of different communities telling about what their churches and what their denominations are doing around reparatory justice. And we'll start off with Brian Frederick Gray from the Disciples of Christ. We'll hear what they're up to in this movement.
Greetings, friends. I'm the Reverend Brian Frederick Gray, Director for Justice and Advocacy Ministries at Disciples Home Missions, a general ministry of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. And I'm a member of the Interfaith Reparatory Justice Table. I've been invited to share about a business resolution from the Disciples General Assembly held last summer in Louisville, Kentucky. In the technical parlance of our denomination, it was GA 2337, and it had the title, Recognition of a Truth and Healing Council, to honor our covenantal relationship with indigenous peoples and to discern ways of reparations for a path to reconciliation. While the resolution didn't come from my office, I am so grateful to our siblings in faith at Yakima Christian Mission, Inglewood Christian Church, and Bethany Christian Church of Farmington, New Mexico, who put it forward. It is an important step in the work for reparatory justice. Again, in the technical parlance of our denominational system, the General Board recommended that this resolution be referred to the Office of General Minister and President for further study. That means that the General Assembly wasn't voting for or against the resolution, so much as voting to continue the conversation and to house those discussions and studies in the office of our highest elected denominational leader. And we did just that. So the conversation, the reflection, and the study continues. Here is some of the language from that resolution that will guide our faithful discernment in this work. The very first line of the resolution reads, "Whereas justice is an essential part of God's nature, manifesting itself as a method of restoration and healing." Don't worry, friends, I won't read the whole resolution to you, but here's another excerpt worth sharing. Whereas becoming institutionally accountable to the indigenous landscape allows Christians to move beyond statements of apology, confession, or solidarity to become more accountable to the landscape, shifting Christian theology to include a hermeneutic of indigeneity, where indigenous well-being is valued over agendas and outcomes, where Christian institutions publicly name their participation in the evil of colonization, and where the indigenous landscape is known as family. Moving on to the resolved section, it states that the General Assembly, quote, offers its support of the work by the Center for Indigenous Ministries, DOC, who believes such justice work is possible by collaborating with the Christian Church Disciples of Christ to support the Truth and Healing Council, who will 1. Openly listen to Indigenous voices, 2. Hear how the Christian Church Disciples of Christ's work impacted Indigenous lives, the lives of their ancestors, and the lives of their children, 3. Gather historical and current Christian Church Disciples of Christ institutional documents authenticating disciples' colonial settler relationship with the indigenous landscape and her peoples. 4. Document and record the haunting stories and histories arriving from colonial settler relationships. And 5. Create a generational restorative and reparative path toward harmony. You can find the full language of the resolution available at the link on the screen. The challenge is that General Assembly didn't pass the resolution outright and enact it immediately. Action matters in this regard. The opportunity is that the work continues. We have an opportunity to dive deep into this process and shape the important work that is to come. May it be so, and amen.
Hello, good evening. My name is Marianne Comfort. I work with the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas, and I'm based in Silver Spring, Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C. As a Catholic who works for a congregation of religious sisters, I'm very aware of the history of the Catholic Church in causing deep harms to Indigenous and Black peoples. This began with the promulgation of papal edicts in the 15th century that encouraged pillaging of lands newly discovered by European explorers, all the way through slavery and the atrocities of native boarding schools in the US and Canada, and of course the Jim Crow era, redlining, and I could name so many other harms over the years. We're now starting to see some of those harms being officially recognized, which we know is a first step toward reparations. For a number of years, Indigenous peoples and Catholic sisters and others have been pressing the Vatican to have a formal revoking of those papal edicts. We had a step towards that in 2022 when Pope Francis, in visiting Canada, made formal apologies to Native peoples when he was meeting with them. He was apologizing for the church's cooperation with the operation of residential schools specifically. He said, "I have come to your native lands to tell you in person of my sorrow, to implore God's forgiveness, healing, and reconciliation." Earlier this year, the U.S. Catholic bishops issued an apology for the trauma the church has inflicted on Native peoples. Again, they named the church's role in the boarding schools that forced assimilation in the 19th and 20th centuries, and they adopted a series of new policies for ministering to Indigenous Catholics. Among religious orders, we've seen the Jesuits issue an apology for their enslavement of slaves and also for the sale of slaves at a critical moment in the history of Georgetown University, where it can be fairly said that Georgetown University exists today because of that sale that got the Jesuits out of some financial trouble some time ago. And the university and the Jesuits have since started some funds for reparations and engaged in conversation with some descendants of that time period. Additionally, we have some congregations of Catholic sisters who are embarking on a journey of decolonization and consideration of incorporating land justice into their property plans. As the number of sisters dwindle and we have a much aging of our congregations, there's a lot of conversation at what to do with property as we no longer need buildings and the land around them. So there are the beginnings of these conversations around land justice, and that's happening in partnership with Black and Indigenous leaders. So these are just a few examples of the movement in reparations, which I hope will bloom into concrete actions that inspire and equip others to explore their own histories and complicity in unjust systems and to seek remedies.
Great. Thanks, Marianne. And it's a pleasure to be with you all this evening. I'm Alan Yarborough with the Office of Government Relations for the Episcopal Church. It's our role to advocate to the U.S. federal government, the positions of the church that come from our governing bodies, General Convention and Executive Council. Knowing we've got a church nerd audience, I think that framing may resonate with many of you. I just want to note what has come from those bodies. We have a rich history of various racial justice resolutions on a number of issues that fit within the reparations, sort of broader reparations framework. But specifically in 2006, our General Convention supported a legislative pathway for reparations to Black Americans, H.R. 40, which is something that we have been continuing to push since then. In 2009 as well, we repudiated the doctrine of discovery. And more recently, in the past couple of years, the church has invested into two different commissions focused on addressing the Episcopal Church's involvement in Indian boarding schools. This has also included advocacy from our office and working with the Department of the Interior and in pushing the Truth and Healing bill in Congress together with many faith-based and secular partners across the country. It's work that I'm grateful to be a part of. It leads to just wonderful and amazing conversations and connections, despite the sometimes heaviness of the topics. There is some beauty that's within it as well. And I'm pleased to introduce my colleague, Reverend Melanie Mullen, who's the Director of Reconciliation, Justice, and Creation Care, to talk a bit more about the sort of church-specific work on reparations.
Thanks, Alan. And as Alan's mentioned, we as a church have realized that this work involves building a groundswell and a grassroots movement to tackle the evils of white supremacy and the effects of chattel slavery and the doctrine of discovery in America. And we've been learning from our own statements for almost 10 years, discerning that where we're called to go is threefold: unearthing and naming historical and racial injustices. Number two, reckoning with systemic harm, a really challenging role for community members to do. And thirdly, discerning what constitutes repair and healing. And so building a movement based on the good intentions of work from our leadership on out from the grass tops to the grassroots has been a challenging role, but we've seen it happen over and over again in all kinds of ways, beginning with our Presiding Bishop Michael Bruce Curry, who called the whole church to engage and become part of a beloved community. To say theologically from every pulpit that we are a part of a community that believes that profoundly, inclusively, and equitably we're defined by love, and that does not exclude our public life. That being this Jesus movement means that we have a proactive response to the call for reparations, racial justice, and truth-telling. And we've seen people act on the hard questions raised by unearthing and naming justice, reckoning with harm in different ways across the country from now. For instance, in Atlanta, we've seen independent parachurch institutions like the Absalom Jones Center for Racial Healing partner across the United States to take money to focus on education. What are these terms? How do we deal with them? And how do you educate people across parishes to deal with the hard work of what it means to do systemic change? We've seen institutions of education like Virginia Theological Seminary participate in asking what it means to identify and do historical narrative research on who they benefit from and harmed in America's history of chattel slavery, and do relational-based reparations, finding descendants, reaching out and including them in financial repair and community repair. We've seen well-off dioceses like New York and Texas devote significant percentages of their income and hold it in trust with special care for the ongoing work of reparations, acknowledging that the research to do this work will take decades, and then building institutional structures to make sure that the funds are there when the community understands this threefold call. But we've seen it also in parishes and dioceses in Maryland and Washington, D.C., where they've looked at financial accounting and looking at funds and assets differently. Asserting that the fact that when you put a mark in time of what your diocese or parish owns, the wealth that's been attributed and how it's distributed, that wealth across the decades and centuries determines whether or not you participate in ongoing harm or harm reduction. Across the church, these grassroots efforts to experiment, to do this work of unearthing, naming, reckoning are hard and complicated, but as a church, we're living into theology that we will prayerfully and lovingly dismantle systems of racism and make that a part of our baptismal life and imperative.
Amen. And blessings to all joining us live or watching this at some point in the future. My name is Seth Wispelway. I am the Minister for Economic Justice in the United Church of Christ national office settings. I'm speaking with you all from the occupied, stolen homelands of the Tohono O'odham Nation and Pasco Yaqui tribes, known to many as Tucson, Arizona. I've been in this role just about a year, still relatively new, and have been using that time to listen to a lot of our churches, catch up, and lay a foundation for ongoing economic justice work, which of course is everything, and everything is connected to economic justice. I bring a grassroots organizing background, primarily working with communities of faith and conscience and different NGOs, focused primarily at the federal level. And I'm excited to bring that experience and skill set into a platform that I've developed for all of these kind of initiatives that I'm calling Fill the Jar, where JAR is an acronym for Jubilee, Abundance, and Reparations. So fill the jar of God's economic justice because of all the headlines and bad news out there of economic injustice and the need that we have to manifest a sustainable future for creation and humanity. These three big buckets hold our divine mandate for how to address these things and move forward. So that's in my wheelhouse, and the way that Fill the Jar will grow going forward is through annual campaigns, a few at a time, that offer churches both within the UCC, but certainly ecumenically. I love working collaboratively internally with my colleagues on racial justice and environmental justice and so on, as well as multi-faith, interfaith, and ecumenically within the National Council of Churches. Real briefly, historically, not that long ago, our own General Synod collection of congregations last year passed a resolution to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans, specifically with committing the United Church of Christ to the legislation that's already been discussed, H.R. 40, the Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act, to create within the UCC a reparations legislative task force inclusive of an advocacy toolkit. And so these things and more, and I have colleagues, Reverend Sakina Hamlin, who was my predecessor in this role, and Becca Choate, who are focused on the United Nations and the Decade on People of African Descent. So I'm just excited to kind of create this foundation through which we can get folks into the river wherever they're ready and whatever they're doing to meaningfully advocate for the reparations that are needed for a sustainable future, and of course addressing centuries-long harm from chattel slavery and indigenous genocide. I wanted to also add that some of my messaging so far, I mentioned I'm relatively new, and I also had an unplanned newborn this year. But some of my messaging so far in essays and webinars has been trying to focus our churches who have obviously passed the resolution in support of exploring and studying reparations, but to grow and evolve the mindset to not just agreeing with the idea of it or saying this is our spiritual calling, but to understand that functionally, practically, the money is there. We pass multi-trillion-dollar budgets, most of which goes to the machinery of death, a lot of it wasted, trillions that can be accounted and unaccounted for. So when we talk about manifesting these things, I want people to know that we can make reparations real. It's not just something to feel good about agreeing to, but to really say this is something we can and must ask our elected leaders to manifest, to have any sort of claims to moral authority on governance. Finally, there have been some lovely examples of churches in our denomination I know of who have already kind of pushed ahead, taking matters into their own hands, pooling resources into down payments for African American families in their areas in California and everything, and allowing established community organizations to steward those funds. And so that's just a brief snapshot of how and where we are on paper committed to pursuing reparations with all y'all, which is the plural of y'all. I'm from Virginia, but also to really put our money where our mouth is in advocacy and finances.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jermaine Ross Allen, and I serve as the inaugural director for the Center for the Repair of Historic Homes with the Presbyterian Church USA, where we are dedicated to growing the number of human beings working to share the good news that repair and reparations make common sense for the common good as soon as possible and for as long as it takes. This evening, I'll share with you just a few different elements that present challenges for the reparations movement today. The first element that I'll discuss is new laws targeting affirmative action, then reparations, and a very important question, do we take a judicial or a legislative path? Third, local reparations versus national reparations. Four, reparations and the historic experience of peoples. And finally, reparations and the challenge of national leadership. Just last year, two Supreme Court cases set a new tone for what we refer to typically as racial justice in this country. Students for fair admissions versus Harvard, and the same group versus the University of North Carolina. The decision that was reached was that Harvard's race-conscious admissions practices violated Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, penalized Asian Americans, favoring other racial groups, thereby making Harvard's practice of race-conscious admissions unconstitutional. This is important for the reparations movement because it indicates that the enemies of reparations are hard at work, making it as difficult as possible for people to pursue economic justice in earnest. However, one way of meeting this challenge is to begin to form the case for reparations, not by reifying race, but describing the impact that people experience transgenerationally as a result of being exposed to race ideology. For example, we may say something like the following. After formalizing emancipation and citizenship following generations of enslavement and second-class citizenship on the basis of race, the United States government failed to apply the constitutional right to equal protection under the law to its citizens of African descent. The U.S. government did this in part in an attempt to satisfy the demands of white citizens who used terrorism and racial segregation to ensure that the concept of race would prevent Afro-Americans from exercising full citizenship rights. Reparations, therefore, are not due to a group of people on the basis of their race or experience of anti-Blackness in general. Instead, reparations are due as a remedy for the particular historical community exposed to the legacies of racist terrorism, racial slavery, and economic apartheid due to the failure of the federal government to uphold the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. And for the sake of clarity in the work of reparations, we refer to this distinct people as the Afro-Americans. Additional communities will, of course, pursue reparations for other historical harms according to the call for repair that their chosen futures require. Second, reparations, the judicial or legislative path. Judicial approaches, lawsuits, and this type of way of approaching reparations faces several challenges. For example, statutes of limitation make it difficult to get reparations for slavery and the impacts of Jim Crow. Also, there are complicated issues of standing, sovereign immunity challenges, and growing legal costs, and also evidentiary processes, all make approaching reparations from a judicial process difficult, to say the least. Just recently, for example, the United States declined to exercise its federal authority under the 13th and 14th Amendments to overturn the state of Oklahoma's sovereign immunity under the 11th Amendment so that plaintiffs and their descendants could win damages by judicial order for the racist massacre against Tulsa's Afro-American community in 1921. That's just one example why we may want to rethink judicial approaches and lean toward a legislative path. Secondly, another challenge is how do we decide between reparations or local reparations rather, or national reparations? Recent research has shown convincingly that no church, no denomination, county, city, or even an individual state possesses resources sufficient to make reparations to Afro-Americans in either their respective context or in the nation as a whole. Therefore, now is not the time to merely speak truth to power in light of the fact that local reparations are not sufficient, but instead, it is impossible for people to do simply nothing. But instead, people should advocate for reparative justice in the places where we work locally and where we live. Instead, we should organize ourselves to do two things at once in order to accomplish singular goal of ending racial wealth disparities in our lifetime. We must affect a massive shift in national public opinion, away from reparations denial and toward reparations advocacy. And we must do this by connecting the local repertory work of diverse organizations to make our reparations advocacy form a permanent public witness to the fact that a faith-based commitment to economic justice is right, is necessary, and is very, very much possible. Reparations and the historic experience of people. I'll begin by saying this as gently as I can. Reparations for Black people is a nonsense statement. At the same time, reparations are too important to lose time and to prevent alliances on cultural conversations about Blackness, who is and who is not Black. Instead, people who are serious about reparations, especially in faith communities, must demand and advocate on the basis of the historical experience of peoples, not colors and other descriptors employed to erase and to confuse. And we do this in order to gain support in the international community by organizing international solidarities. And these international solidarities should and will have the capacity to avoid competition about reparations, confusion around reparations, fragmentation around the wrong terminology, and ultimate defeat. Instead, reparationists in the faith communities should join calls for reparations to Haiti from the government of France, reparations for Afro-Americans from the government of the United States, reparations for the Afro-Peruvian people from the government of Peru, and reparations for the people of Gaza and other Palestinians from the government of Israel, and almost certainly from the United States government as well. And finally, number 5, reparations and the challenge of national leadership. As has been mentioned earlier, we have recently lost a major champion for social justice and for reparations, in particular in Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, who passed away earlier this year, less than 2 months ago. And her loss means that we continue to need a champion on the congressional level and the federal government for HR 40 or any other bill that can accomplish what the best of HR 40 represents. Also, due in part to recent campaigns mounted by AIPAC, we have lost Cori Bush, and we have also lost Representative Jamal Bowman, both major champions of the reparations. And so now it is within our grasp, but it is our duty to join the calls from other people that we get a champion for HR 40, the Afro-American reparations, as soon as possible. We must also avoid fawning over and make excuses for politicians and other members of the newest leadership class who do not prioritize our interests. I don't have anybody in particular in mind. We should just think broadly about politicians who typically fawn over, who don't prioritize our interests, whoever they might be. We must also inspire leaders who depend on the Afro-American vote to understand that they must prioritize reparations and other vital interests of the Afro-American people in exchange for loyalty and exchange for votes. This, once again, has been a presentation from the Center for the Repair of Historical Harm to the Presbyterian Church USA. My name is Jermaine Ross Alum, and it's an honor to speak to you, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jermaine. Here we are. And I told you we would not have your time for long on this evening. So unfortunately, Sakina Hamlin was not able to join us this evening, but she sent notes. So I'm going to share her notes with you for opportunities. There is a book, study, and video. And I'm going to put all of these in the chat. Please be certain to save the chat as well, so that you will be able to get this information and keep it for your future use. So there is a book and video called A Global View of Race and Racism, first edition by Judy Ruth Olet. Now, this is a book that is the only text currently on the market that explores race and racism from a global perspective. There you go. With a clear and direct writing style, author Judy Ruth Olet places an emphasis on sociological concepts as an organizing factor, featuring 9 short chapters focused on a broad range of nations around the world. This brief text examines central concepts and issues in racial and ethnic studies, including apartheid, assimilation, colonialism, multi-ethnicity, caste, ethno-nationalism, white frame, genocide, migration, and affirmative action. Each chapter discusses the ways in which racist structures and practices have been or being challenged. Chapters also include critical thinking questions and highlighted key concepts and terms, which are summarized in a glossary at the end of the book. Who doesn't love a good glossary? And then she also submitted a video regarding the doctrine of discovery. And I'm about to put that in the chat for your use and learning, so that I know you've heard doctrine of discovery mentioned a little earlier. Here is a reference YouTube for your research. Now, the YouTube video is a trailer, and for the longer documentary, you can purchase that on Vimeo. Of course, we're going to give you some more reading resources for a history, the construction of race and myth. And this is a video link. You'll see at the beginning, it mentions indenture contractual agreement with fixed terms. Some came against their will. Many came in exchange for a free passage, and many eventually became property owners. So again, more language and more iconography to have a better understanding of it. Uh, there is, I believe, Keith, if you wouldn't mind putting again, and also Jared, putting again the network action linkage that you have. The Creating a Culture of Repair is a book by Pastor Robert Turner. It is a wonderful read. It is, and here is my copy with all of the little dog hair pages and very much so well written in. As you can see, it is a quick book and it is a necessary book. It gives you very well written, very well thought out. It talks about, the different types of reparations, individual reparations, societal reparations, institutional reparations, and spiritual reparations. And at the beginning of each chapter, there's a brief overview, and it comes complete with various different, I don't know if you can see that. It's blurry, I'm sorry, but it comes with different actions for you and your communities to become more involved with. Thank you, Keith, for putting in the National Council of Churches Interfaith Table webinar with Pastor Turner as well. There's also engagement. You heard the farm bill mentioned. There is the acres of ancestry, the continued call to cancel the pig for debt. My goodness, we are asking for the call of the appeal for the Pigford Farms, the cancellation of their debts. I'm putting that in the chat. Also, another link for the toxic debt for the Pigford farmers. As you can see, the work is necessary, the work is full, and we all need somebody to, like the former First Lady of the United States said, is to do something, but more on that in a second. She also wanted to mention that this is the involvement in eliminating food apartheid and building a new food justice system. An example is in the work of the Black Church Food Security Network. That is a good organization to connect with. And there are decolonizing efforts of our faith, returning of land, grant, not loan, efforts to assist families in purchasing homes, Lent, or other faith studies themed around where faith has been complicit in colonialism and how to stop it. We heard Seth mention about the work that is being done in the UCC church. And I don't know, Seth, if you have that information regarding, I believe it is the Arlington Community Church, UCC. If you wouldn't mind sharing that, I would greatly appreciate it. She also mentioned here the involvement in reparations and land justice. In 2018, a group of farmers of color and organizers based at Soul Fire Farm in New York launched the online reparations map for Black Indigenous farmers, calling for reparations of land and resources so that we can grow nourishing food and distribute it in our communities. The organizers assert that our food system was built on the stolen land and stolen labor of Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian, and people of color. Their map shows projects of farmers of color across the country and lists the resources these farmers need for development and growth. These maps organizers encourage people to people solidarity in meeting the needs and view and the endeavor not only as a method for increasing the self-determination of communities of color, but also of providing an anchored source of connection and healing in people's everyday lives. And then there is the United Nations Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. They are accepting proposals for the themes for its upcoming session, fourth session, to be held in New York in the spring of 2025. And we have some member faith communities and coalitions that are strongly considering submitting by the September 3rd deadline. Whew, that's a lot of work, isn't it, friends? I'm sure, I'm so sure that you all are saturated, possibly overwhelmed by all of this information that we have poured out to you. I see this in the question by you, Nancy. Hi, Nancy. How do you save the chats? Will this presentation be recorded and sent out? You hope so? So many resources. Indeed, there are so many resources. And yes, Hope is making a comeback. So if you look, I'm not sure where you are on your system, but if you will see in the chat location located in the right-hand corner, you'll see three dots, not at the bottom, but in the chat box area. You'll see three dots that says more. You can click on more and it says save chat. Let me see if I can. No, I can't share my screen because Zoom won't let you share your screen. How unfortunate. But yes, you will be able to go on to the National Council of Churches website or YouTube. Keith, if you wouldn't mind sharing that as well, the link to the YouTube page where you can subscribe to the National Council of Churches. The National Council of Churches YouTube page, and that's where you will be able to find this video plus a plethora of other resources available to you. That is your homework. That is your do something. That is your way to engage and reignite, and perhaps a leader will blossom and bloom from this conversation as well. I want to extend appreciation and thank you to my friends and colleagues, Alan, Marianne, Reverend Melanie, Jared, Reverend Jermaine, Reverend Seth, and Keith. And in absentia is Reverend Sakina and Reverend Reuben. Thank you for joining us this evening. Okay, you don't have access to the Zoom. Well, it will be posted for just go back to the National Council of Churches website. Give Keith, a couple of days to upload it. Don't think that he just forgot all about it. But give Keith, a couple of days. Come back on a Monday or Tuesday, right, Keith? Give me a thumbs up if I'm helping you out or anything. And he will be able to give him a chance to upload that onto their website and I got a thumbs up. Yay, Keith. So on Monday or Tuesday, please come back to the website, National Council of Churches. Keith put the link to the website into the chat for the people. So make sure you click on that particular website so you will be able to save it and check back later. And I want to also thank the Bishop Vashti Murphy McKenzie. Your Grace, thank you for allowing us to have this opportunity to have this conversation and this and to be here for the Interfaith Reparatory Justice Table. I appreciate you on behalf of the actual table. We are grateful that you've allowed us to have this space and this time to continue the work that we all have been called to do. Now, as we leave this place, but never from the divine's presence, it is my prayer that the cloud by day and the fire by night goes before you to make your way safe, easy, successful, peaceful, prosperous, and abundant your way. It is in the name of the Afro-Palestinian wonder who is Jewish that I pray. Ashe and amen.